My name is Olato Sam. I'd like to welcome all of you here. As you can see, we have two wonderful presentations for you this morning. The first is Stories from Prison, a preliminary study of the effectiveness of rehabilitative incarceration in Guyana that will be presented by Mr. Will Campbell and Ms. Faith Ross. And then contributors to non-suicidal self-injury in incarcerated youth by Dr. Larkin McReynolds, and she'll present online. Let's see her there. I think they're two fascinating studies, just by the titles alone, and I'm sure you're all quite interested in participating in this. So I'd like to just get right to it and introduce, starting of course with our first presenter, sorry. I knew I was gonna mess this up, but I had it. So maybe I should start with Will first. Will? Will Campbell is currently a grief and trauma counseling grief and trauma counselor and a registered psychotherapist, educator, and consultant. He has a passion for promoting mental wellness and raising the standards of educational services in Guyana. He holds a master's degree in psychology and educational leadership and is a candidate for a PhD in grief and trauma counseling. He teaches educational psychology at the University of Guyana and has designed and implemented behavior modification programs for several agencies, including the Guyana Prison Service. Please give a warm welcome to Will Campbell. Come on, we could do better than that. Got a nice TWD welcome. So Ms. Ross is a social worker and candidate for a master's degree in educational leadership. She has worked as a remedial teacher for at-risk youth for more than 5 years. She currently works with Solutions Training Consultancy and Counseling Services as a trainer and behavior modification facilitator, conducting anger management therapy sessions for male and female offenders in the Guyana prison system. She also facilitates classroom management workshops and sessions for teachers. She volunteers at the Angois Avenue youth-friendly space, providing recreational and educational programs for at-risk youth. Please welcome the speaker. Without further ado, I'd like to invite two folks to the front here so we can begin our first session.
Good morning. I'm Faith with my colleague Will, and today we want to share with you stories from prison. But before we actually start to share those stories with you, I want to go through some numbers with you. So, from a study that was conducted, a report that was shared by the Nations University in 2020, we found that the Guyana Prison Service has just over 2,000 inmates. And of those, 69 of them are female. Right? Also, what the report would have shown is that the recidivism rate is 20%. Now we're looking at persons who would have committed, who would have reoffended within 2 years of their release from prison. Now, if we should look at a more widely used definition, we'll see that those numbers would increase by 30%, because we're looking at persons who would have re-offended within a 3-year period. Also, coming out of that report, we found that 8% of the persons who are incarcerated are individuals who have no secondary education, and half of those persons would have dropped out of school by the age of 15. That's a large number. Also, We found that those individuals are persons who were exposed to violence in their childhood, and unfortunately, that was perpetrated to them from their parents. And from our informal discussions or inquiries we have with persons we work with, we found that just a small percentage of them came from homes that were stable.
So what are we doing in the prison? We have designed and implemented a behavior modification program, commonly referred to as the anger management program. And this is something that we started in 2017. At that time, we were working in 4 of the 5 prison locations across the country. And that program was interrupted by COVID-19. We resumed work in this year, in May of this year. And since then, we have worked with 132 inmates. Now, of course, the number is much larger if we consider the ones we've worked with since 2017. But this study, this inquiry here, focuses on the inmates that we've worked with from May until now. So we had 132 inmates, 83 of whom were male and 40 female.
Now, you may want to know, why is it we're doing what we're doing? First of all, I want to mention that within the mission statement of the Guyana Prison Service, their aim is to rehabilitate and reintegrate individuals into society. Right? Also, another reason for this program is that we have high recidivism rates, and so we want to bring those numbers down. So we want to work with them with this program. Also, there's a prevalence of offender risk factors. We're looking at things like low educational exposure. We're looking at persons who are exposed to violence and who come from environments where they have, or families where they have low social economic statuses. Also, we believe that once we're able to reduce these numbers and to work with these individuals, then we will be able to make society much safer, right?
So how do we propose to do this? The anger management program, as we refer to it, is a reintegration and social reentry program. It's targeted for inmates who expect to be released within the next 12 months, within 12 months of starting the program. So we hold guided group discussions, group therapy discussions, and we have decided to use a therapeutic rather than a theoretical approach. So we don't go in there and lecture them. We sit in a circle and we have discussions with them, and those discussions are guided by the facilitators. We try to restrict group size to 12. That doesn't always work out because sometimes the prison administration is anxious to get some people into the program really quickly because they think that they need it. So sometimes our groups are a little larger. But those persons who have worked with group therapy would appreciate that smaller groups tend to be a little more, it's more effective in smaller groups.
Yes, because they share more, and so we have more interactive sessions with them.
Correct. And in addition to that, it's harder for them to remain anonymous in a small group.
Yeah.
It is a 12-week program, so every week we meet with a group for 2 hours. So it's essentially a 24-hour program. And an important part of that program is the graduation itself. Let me explain why graduation is so important. A lot of the participants in these programs would say to us, I've never graduated from anything. And so we feel like just having them be a part of this graduation process improves their sense of self-efficacy, the feeling that they have accomplished something. And that alone translates after they leave, so in a sense that, you know what, I don't necessarily have to return to a life of crime. There are other things that I can do and achieve and accomplish. I think I've exhausted this one. All right, so what we found is that in this, since we've started in this, I almost said administration of the program, we have a 69% completion rate. We feel that that is a little low. However, when we look at the reasons that the persons withdraw, maybe it's not so bad because of only 12 persons voluntarily withdrew from the program. They decided, we'd rather do work on the street, we'd rather work in the prison on this day, or we just prefer to stay in our dorms and chat with the other guys. Only 12 of 132. The others, we call them involuntary withdrawals because these are persons that have been transferred to other facilities or who've been granted early release from prison. And so it's not such a bad number in terms of the participation. So less than 10% voluntarily drop out of the program.
Right. So you might want to know how we cover our numbers and what we do at the end of our sessions, which is the participants. So what we do with them at the end of the 12th week, or I should say the 10th week, 10th week. On the 11th week, we have them complete an exit interview questionnaire. So when we give them that, the information we look for is reasons as to why these individuals decided to join the program. Did they choose to come to the program because they saw that they have that need to work on their annual, or is it that they were forced to be a part of that class? Secondly, we look at
before you answer that, some of them join because they're curious as to what goes on in this class, and some join because they just want an opportunity to come out of their dorms and get some fresh air.
Right. Then we also looked at which the parts of the program that were most impactful for them. Right? We want to know what made the difference for them. Also, we look at how they use the program, how useful is stage. We also look at how they're going to use the information that was shared in the discussion during the sessions to help them, fix themselves, help them work on themselves and change what they see needs to be changed. And then, of course, at the end, we also take some general comments from them, maybe things that ideas or opinions they have on how the program can be improved. So we take those suggestions from them as well.
And they usually say nice things about the program and about this, and we think that we're nice people and we do. Okay, so we want to move on now to some of the things that we found. Now, this little study here focused on the perceptions of the participants. Maybe sometime later we will look at the perceptions of other stakeholders involved, but we focused on the perceptions of participants, and these are where the stories come from. This is what we found.
I just use that as an example. It was really a hard thing for me to get over, but in doing so, in anger management, I learned to deal with that. You have to learn to let go and forgive people.
Right. So this video here, or if you look at the caption, we found that for both males and females, they found the understanding emotions, respect and forgiveness as being topics that are being things that we would have discussed that are meaningful or impactful for them. Right. So they shared that with us.
Yeah, I was a little surprised because I thought that men would be more interested in things like respect and power, but I was kind of shocked that men, the male participants, were interested in emotions and understanding emotions and learning about emotional intelligence and so on, and recognizing and appropriately responding to other people's emotions and identifying their own emotions. I was surprised. I shouldn't be proud, but I was surprised that men were interested in anything that had to do with emotions.
One of the things that we enjoyed the most is that the fact that they felt comfortable enough to express those emotions and share among their fellow inmates.
Yes, you had top guys talking about the fact that they cry sometimes in their cells.
And one guy even said you should cry and pray.
Right, that was his
way of dealing with
stress.
Yeah.
Pray and cry and pray.
Yeah, this agro management class is very helpful to me One, it helped me for control me anger a lot because I was a very hasty person. I said, before I think, and from since I come into this class, I seen things and handling situation and problems different because I see I avoiding a lot of things. Like problem for one, if somebody get me vexed, I would sit down and think before I go to the person or if I do them anything, what will be the consequence after. And then it helped me talking to one people who is around me in the prison, same location with me, and they're taking the advice, and I see a lot of changes.
Right, so listening to the video, you see, and looking at the captions that are there, you see that persons, they were able to identify things in themselves that they needed to change and they wanted to, and they actually wanted to work on it. It's not like we told them how. They themselves, at the end of the program, or even during the program, they found out, you know what, these are some things that I need to change myself and I want to work, I'm willing to do it. And we saw persons actually start from one place, and by the end of the program, we saw those changes, significant changes.
Yes, I think very often when we start the sessions, we would ask, how many of you are here because you have an anger problem? And sometimes one hand would go up or two hands would go up because some of them did not recognize before that the way they were dealing with anger was in fact problematic. They didn't see their anger responses as a problem. But by the time we get to the third or fourth session, they start to realize, you see light bulbs going off in people's heads, and they say, yeah, that's my problem.
And we've had several of them who said, I don't have an anger problem. So I don't even know why I'm in this class. But then you saw them move from that to, I actually have, no, these are actually some of the things that trigger me, and these are the things that get me angry. And so I do get angry.
Since I started, I've been a changed person because I've seen certain things in a different way. I don't have to behave in an arrogant way that I used to behave before because I can deal with the situation. That was the class have taught me.
One of the things that we are very happy for is that the program, this is the feedback we get. People say, I'm able to see things differently. I'm able to see things from a different perspective. And so some of the things that triggered me before no longer have to be triggers. Because one of the things we talked to them about is reducing the number of triggers if you're going to manage your anger. And having them see things that previously triggered them as not necessarily something to make me angry goes a long way in helping them.
And they would have expressed that if they had known this before, prior to being incarcerated, then they would have made better choices.
Yeah,
and we hear that from a lot of them.
That's probably the saddest thing we hear in here. You know, where were you all this time? If we'd known this before, we would not have been here.
And I noticed with it. Something I noticed with the participants as well is that even while we're there conducting these sessions, you can see them deep in thought, and you can tell that they're actually taking the time to process the information and probably go over it, thinking of things that they would have experienced in the view of the past.
And the class helped me a lot because we know when we go there, we get changed sports.
But you won't understand this if you don't understand Guyanese Creole. You know, what he's saying is this is going, when I get out there, you know, I can't wait to be a different person when I get out there. And part of what we flipped out was him saying, I'm going to share this with my sons.
Yes, that's the first thing he actually mentioned, that he has his sons, and he wanted to share what he would have learned with them.
Now, this number 93%, I'm pretty sure, this is me speculating, that the only reason it's not 100% is because some of the participants sadly don't have any expectation of leaving this, and so they don't take yes here. But I think most of them, if not all, saw the information as potentially useful, even outside of the prison walls.
That's what I said it.
All right, so here are some of the perspectives, and we surveyed 44 of the, what is that number again? 134 persons there. 120 people that enrolled in the program. This is what we found. All of them felt like they had learned new things about themselves. All of them felt like this program was a catalyst for change, for them changing their lives. all of them felt like most of them felt like they could use this information to actually help other people. And we thought that was really good, that cascading effect. We won't be able to reach all of the things. We won't be able to talk to everyone, but we actually
Encourage them to
become
peace ambassadors.
peace ambassadors within the prison, even after they leave. And then we had more than half saying, I'm seeing life differently. Then we had about, what would that be, about 90% saying, I now see that there are things about myself that I need to change. Just over half felt like this could be helpful in the prison system. And let's talk about that for a moment. They felt like prison is a hostile environment. I'm saying they felt like we see that. The prison is a hostile environment, and it's difficult to maintain calm and peace all the time. And many of them feel like if I am too,
If they come off to be too understanding and to be somebody who lets things go easily, then persons might take advantage of that, think that oh, they're weaker, think that they can do whatever they want.
right?
So because of that fear, they use anger, and this is what they would have said, they use anger as a way to mask all of that and to keep others away from them.
Stay safe.
And to stay safe.
One of them said to us yesterday, I think it was, in here is kill or be killed. And in a lot of cases, that is literally, so. So 26 of them felt like it would be helpful in prison. And 37 of them said this can be helpful even after we leave. And again, the reason this number is not higher, I am speculating, is because the other persons didn't have any, are not likely to leave. So they didn't think that it would help them in those.
So we want to look at some of the challenges that we face. So one, well, I've mentioned before is that there are some persons who may not attend class because they think, okay, I'm going to just stay in the site today, or I might find all activities engaging in his sports or something. So due to those reasons, we find persons not attending. Right? Also, the space in which these sessions are conducted, it's an open space. So we have persons who are, passing outside. We have, a lot of talking. So there's a kind of, some of background noise. So that affects the session sometimes. Also, what we've noticed is that after we conduct these sessions, we see persons, maybe some of the topics that were discussed, they are very sensitive to the individual. So they might break down. And after we leave, who do they go to help them deal with those demons that were raised, So that's another challenge. And the next is that after we have these sessions with them, they now have new ways of dealing with their anger and so on. They're now sent back to the environment that is hostile, the same environment they came from in the first place. So that makes it even more difficult. That makes it difficult for them. All right. So those are some of the challenges that we have.
Rising out of those challenges, we have a little bit a number of recommendations. And one is that we feel like there should be some evaluation to determine needs because what we perceive happens in the system is that the administration determines you do anger management, you do carpentry, you do computer technology. And I'm not sure that they actually assess these persons to see where the actual needs are. And so we feel like it would be much more effective if there was more structured approach to determining who was involved in what program. Then we talked about the spaces in one location. So just a big open space, outside of a building, passing up and down, lots of noise in the background. And you might have heard some of that background noise in some videos. So we felt like if we had a nice enclosed space like this, where it was nice and cool, it would make it easier for people to share. We felt like if officers were trained in managing behavior, if there was more training in managing behavior, and it was not just all punitive and not just all physical punishment, it would go a long way in providing an environment that will allow them to use these new skills that they learn in these sessions. They talked about follow-up and aftercare for participants. As she said, very often in our presentations, you could tell that this person is dealing with something that is bigger than what we can manage in this session. And there is no, we're not allowed to provide that additional intervention services. And we don't know that there are any professional services being offered to these persons. And then we feel like a more cohesive, more holistic approach could be utilized to make these rehabilitation programs more effective. So you might have one person who has behaviors, who has trauma, who lacks social skills and maybe economic skills. That's not the term I'm looking for, but you know what I'm talking about. And so we feel like that one person should be able to access all these programs so that they come out whole and not just move out to Manchester. So now I don't get upset anymore, but I can't find a job. How do I take care of myself? So we felt like it would be very helpful if there were more cohesive, holistic approach to these.
Right, so in future work, we think that we can have a system where we actually check in with these inmates or these participants when they were released from prison, just to see how things are going forward, see the progress that they're making. And I think that would be beneficial to the program as well, to making it even more effective. So what additional programs you can implement to make it better.
So to make this before we get into before we hear from you, we'd like to publicly say thank you to a number of persons who made this study and who facilitate our work. And that includes the director of prisons, the officers in charge at the locations, all of the officers involved. The organizing committee of this conference who allowed us to share this work that we are very excited about. The solutions staff, which includes Ms. Denise McKenzie, who sits here, she's one of our trainers, and she has opted to not say anything today. And we want to thank you for coming in and filling up these seats so that we didn't have to talk to empty chairs. Or to ourselves, which we do a lot. Your questions?
Since I have joined the anger management program, I became a whole different person. Reason being, one of the main things that I learned that was beneficial to me was how to understand my emotions, understand what it is I was actually feeling. Because at first, I lashed out at every single thing there is, because I felt as though, I was angry. Anyhow, after I learned to identify my different types of emotions that I was feeling, I was made to understand and learn to understand that not everything that I feel is that I'm angry. Sometimes I may be jealous, I may be sad, And from that, I've learned how to deal with it. And from learning how to deal with it, I became a new person. Because now, I see things now the way that person will try to show me, instead of being arrogant and national because I think that this is my way, or I'm just seeing it this way, and the person will be like, no, do. I put myself in another person's shoe and I try to see what they're showing me. And they all make sense, because not at all times we're going to see it that way, because when we're all in our feelings and emotions, we skip a whole lot of things and we miss it just because we're not thinking straight. And the other thing was respect. Now, for me, I wanted everyone to respect me. So, I used to be the big bad wolf, because I gotta gain my respect. But now learning that I gotta learn to respect myself before others can respect me, which is true. Because when I look at the way I used to behave, and I see other person behaving that same way, to me they look stupid, I ask myself if this is the way I used to look. And it wasn't a good sight for me in seeing how they behave, as I see like they used to be afraid of me.
So remember, I started by saying that there are some inmates who said that this is how I am, nothing is going to change my behavior. or the program wouldn't necessarily help you, but this young lady was one of those persons. She was one of those persons who, at the very first session, her face was ridged up, and she said that nothing you guys tell me is going to make me change. I don't care what you guys say, it's not going to make a difference, right? And she was like that for maybe the first 2 or 3 sessions that we had, but then gradually, and she didn't share a lot then, but gradually we found that she started sharing, her facial expression changed, and would you believe that now she's one of the peer facilitators in prison? So she now works with other participants, and what I love about this is that the other participants are able to see somebody who is in the same environment as they are, and they're choosing more constructive ways of dealing with their anger or dealing with situations that might be difficult for them to deal with. And that's one of the things that we are most important. That fact that she's now a changed person and she's trying to educate others and to work with them. And she's doing an excellent job at it. And she's not the only one. We have other participants who are now helping us facilitate the program within the prison.
Well, you beat me to it. I'm gonna ask you to do exactly that. We just want to thank the facilitators, the representatives, and now open up to any questions, comments, any thoughts. I'll take Ms. Wagner first, and then Fred.
Looking at the theoretical concepts that rather because that I think that could be challenging because not the working building was valid theory. Very valid theory in terms of behavior. No? And I don't think that we all came out to be valid. And so we need to challenge that. That's one. The second thing is usually after you do the counting, I volunteer for the work and my experience. If they go back to the community without a liaison, they would never or seldom will they change. And what I do is try to hook them up with a social work in the university who needs something for their thesis or something like that to monitor them and bring them to the level of respect that it will be a study or a case study, whatever it is. No? And that's my third point is those are the things rapidly. Or will have basic education or fall back in anger. We do not. Me too, right? The fall back is anger. And so it's not necessarily that they want to agree, it's that they don't have the currency of language to express themselves. And it's easy to fall back to that. Finally, those who have to go back to the hood, right? What can we do? The hood is the hood. The hood is the hood. As you would think, get it off for environments, right? The hood is the hood. So I cannot go back to the hood and be respectful. I cannot go back to the hood and act me, right? But that's the hood. No, but that would happen.
Thank you very much.
So I must commend both of you for the presentation, very insightful. My question is, what did you use to determine that anger management was what they had needed? Could it have been any other thing like if a may have needed some sort of discipline or some sort of another area that you would focus on? What did you make? Why did you decide on anger management as the tool you're going to use?
The short answer is that that is not our decision. Prison Services approached us and said, we need an anger management program because we have a lot of angry people, a lot of violence. And then we don't get to choose. But what we try to do is we don't just address anger. We look at emotional management. We help them identify the source of the challenge. So for a lot of them, as sisters, sorry, as Margaret said, for a lot of them, anger is just the expression of a deeper issue. And in some cases, it's a lack of education. In some cases, it's just not knowing another way. And so we explore different possibilities so that they get to pick out, okay, this is my problem, this is what I need to work.
In some cases, we found that it's also trauma, some form of trauma. And so they don't know how to deal with it, but so when they do it, it's actual anger, it's an anger.
Alito, teachers seen online as a question. You mentioned lack of aftercare or follow-up. Are there any plans to address or lobby for additional interventions for inmates to take care of their psychological needs?
Okay, so when we submitted our proposal, when we submitted our program outline, it included aftercare. That has not been, that has not gotten going. We haven't got many traction on that. But every opportunity we get, we try to impress on the authorities that it is important for us to have this aftercare. And they will tell you, yeah, we have social work. But the persons attached to prison are overtasked. We have, something the prison system, one social work, 500 inmates, and that,
That can be
it's
exhausting. One person.
impossible.
Yeah.
So, one here and then.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I must say thank you to Mr. Campbell and team for such a presentation. It is absolutely accurate because I work in that environment and it is very much accurate. However, I have one thing to clarify.
Sure.
Not to bring clarity. But before I touch on that, based on the last question that was asked online, that's something that we're lobbying for psychologists and more social workers, because indeed our social workers are overworked, and the ratio, I think you missed it by 200 for the Lusitan prison. The Lusitan prison have approximately 900 men with one social worker.
Wow.
So that's the ratio. So it's very much challenging for that one social worker. So, meet the needs of all those men, and then not just the needs of those that are incarcerated, the families are attached to, because from time to time we have to call the families to come and do work with them, and that works. If we notice a man is behaving, aggressive or so, then we call in the family member, and the family member helps us in dealing with that issue. The aftercare, that's something that we really would like to happen, but not with the current social workers being involved that much, being that they are overtasked. So new set of persons to do the aftercare would be welcome so much. In terms of the challenges, you talk about that in the presentation, the free assessment. So one clarity, we do free assessment. It is called at each location, we have the sentence planning unit. So there's a unit at each location that is called that, and then there's a board that manages that unit. I think Mr. Gavaya, he is the chairman of that board, and he manages that board, right? So there's maybe they are lagging at some location, but it is pertinent, and it's a rule that on admission to prison, that unit, the inmates that came into prison, they see that unit, and then that unit make an assessment of what programs we will place each inmate in, whether remand or convicted. First, it used to be we would focus more on the convicted persons, but then the fact that persons are being remanded for so many years, we decided, listen, we have to capture every person that comes into the prison. So on the admission to prison, that's one form of assessment. And then we have the security personnel that will do their assessment, the social workers that will do their assessment, and then we also assess based on the behavior patterns in prison. So if we realize this is the attitude coming from a person and we place him or her in that training program, also we allow them to say what they would like to do. You're around for a period, what is it you would like to do? So indeed, pre-assessment is being done, but maybe you guys did not see that. Our humblest apologies. So maybe I'm happy that I'm being exposed to it. I would know that we have to up with that, because maybe we have lagging going on with that aspect of pre-assessment that is not seen by we would say the persons that we outsource or our volunteers, but we will up that. And we welcome more of your training programs, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you.
And may I humbly recommend that we include on the assessment panel behavioral scientists who will be able to who will be able to actually do things like psychological testing, so that
So,
they're able to place this.
yes. So I actually wanted to go off of your comment. So there is a study currently being done in the United States in the New York courts with probation officers, and they built a tool to do behavioral health and substance use screening. It can be done by anyone, it can be done by a layperson, and it's a tool, like an online tool that could just be done on a tablet. It is an easy thing to train people to do, and they've been training probation officers actually to do it in the criminal courts. But it would be a way, like, to have a standardized tool that could potentially be used. It would have to be adapted, obviously, but that is, it's, and the work is from Catherine Elkington. I would be happy to share her name so that you can look up the work. But that's a project that's currently being done because we have the same problems in New York where there's all these behavioral health and substance use issues that are getting missed because people are going straight into the prison system. And then in addition to that, I just want to say I commend you on doing emotion management, because I think that's the core to a lot of therapy, is knowing how to regulate your emotions. And knowing when you're experiencing something, what is the better way to manage it than using negative coping methods or anger or whatever the issue may be. But it's wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Judging most that comes here, are here. But we all recognize the need for ongoing follow-up of the person in that we need to change. We need to change to take years. So you did mention something about daycare educators. Program. If you could just elaborate a little on that. What are the plans to have this kind of training on a continuous basis in all of the prisons until whenever?
So to sign up here, what we do is the inmates that will spend will come into the program with us. We have them work along with us on with the other batches. So they help us with the program, with teaching the other participants that we have. So that's how we use material here, and we encourage them to be, as we said before, peace ambassadors within the prison. So they share that information, not just with the persons they're helping us with, but also with other inmates that they spend the time with in the prison.
In terms of expanding the program, we initially, when we started, we were in all of the prisons. I think the Guyana Prison Service expects that we will be able to re-expand, get back to that level of functioning in the near future. And I have the OC responsible for prison as well here, right here, saying yes. So we're excited about moving back into the other facilities as well. So in the new year.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome that.
In the new year, we'll be going to all of the prisons and expanding the program. And this program is going to continue into the new year. I just heard that.
Just one comment. Because you were saying that you were going to have trace work, you were recommending trace work programs. So a lot of times when we want to push for intervention or what we do, you do need support and funding. And if you have evidence that is there, not just within the prison, how these people will have to cope outside of the prison, you have a lot of evidence to show as to why you need funding for others. So yes,
Thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. I recall that there was a program which was funded by USAID a few years ago. And it was mainly with when NOC had over a few hundred children. And this program had included coaching and mentoring. So you do the program and all of that, and they were about a lot of persons who they employ and train to coach and to mentor.
And I think that is, essentially what we're calling the aftercare. So I think some kind of investment should be done with first, with that person on board, who can mentor, who can coach, who can, okay, negotiate with, companies and entities who have these guys attached or the girls attached so that they can be gainfully employed. As, my friend said here, you know, that behavior change is a process. And we normally relapse on the spectrum to behavior change. So when I relapse, who is there then for me to talk to? And with the coaches and the mentors for that program, these people had credits. So the juvenile could call your coach, my mentor, and walk me through and feeling angry. My parents just yelled at me and I want to get out with something. And they can call and, you know, help them through that behavior until they come to a point that they can really manage their emotions. So I just want to recommend that when there is another there was so if you can, that should be included a component that will address coaching and mentoring and as we would call it, the app here.
Thank you very much.
So, last comment.
Good morning. I am Ms. Cummings from the Strategic Department, Prison Headquarters. One of the initiatives that our Honorable Minister of Home Affairs has taken is to implement the Fresh Start initiative for inmates who would have completed programs of anger management and many others in the service to be able to qualify for a, so to speak, a kit that allows them to be gainfully or self-employed after they would have left the prison service. The value of that kit has thus far been over from 100,000 to 200,000, and we've had it for this year. I think it's over 10 inmates, 10 inmates so far that would have benefited from that. So it's something that is ongoing and important for 2023 as well. So work is happening along the lines of having inmates secure employment. And we also have an oversight committee that also looks at the more or less monitor their self-employment after release to be able to gauge how well they've been doing. We do not have a connection with Ministry of Social Security to be able to have a better collaboration in terms of providing emotional and other support that ex-offender would need after release. But that's a work in progress, but we are monitoring as best as we could those who would have received those kits thus far. Thank you.
If I may, just before we wrap up, two things. You pointed out the environment having an impact to some extent on the ability of the inmates to fully demonstrate some of the things that they might even feel and want to actually display as normal behavior. And it raised the question in my head as to the extent to which we're painting everybody with the same brush. People end up in there, I would assume, for a whole range of reasons. But in our minds, I think there's this concept of a prison that might be, you know, this angry, silly, but you get the point. The question is, in your work, have you been able to discern differences, possible differences in relation to who they are as different from who the environment makes you become? And I think that might be very interesting. And then the other thing, you also noted that you were surprised that the men were talking about their emotions and stuff. Are there any other nuances that came out, things that we didn't expect to see that you might want to share? And those were my two contributions.
Right. So for me, answer to the first question is the answer to the second. One of the things that I learned really quickly after we started working in prison, and this person, is that not every inmate is a criminal. In the sense that not all of them are criminal minded. There are people in there who were law-abiding citizens who made a mistake. One day was driving too fast and struck someone down and is in prison for vehicular homicide, causing death by dangerous driving.
Or they were in the wrong place.
Or in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so what we see is that many of them, they put up this, we call it wall of anger, in an effort to protect themselves. But when you're able to talk through that wall, you realize that behind this is a really great person. Strange enough, some of the most violent offenders, if you're able to talk through that wall, you find sometimes a frightened little boy or a frightened little girl who really wants to be nice. And one of the things that I learned out of that experience is that nobody wants to be bad. Nobody. Some people just never learn how to be good.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Please, again. Put them around the slide.